We have covered a ton in the last few videos of all of the different basics of CSS, the syntax of CSS, and even the inner workings of how things like inheritance work. So it's finally time to start implementing all of these things that we've learned into our very first project. And I'm going to structure the projects of this course all very similarly so you can get started working on them all exactly the same. So the way that I'm going to do nearly every project in this course is I'm going to give you a set of HTML for the project that we're going to be constructing. This project is going to be a blog, so I'm going to give you all of the HTML for this blog, which you can find in the description down below for this course. And then together, we're going to style all of this HTML to look exactly how we want using the knowledge that we've learned before. So let me open this up and show you exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, so here we are. I have the HTML that you can find in the description on the left-hand side here, as you can see. And on the right-hand side, I have the finished version of what we're going to create. As you can see, it's not the most appealing looking thing in the world, which is okay because we're only trying to learn how to use the knowledge we just figured out. We want to just apply these basic CSS principles, so we're just going to create this really simple looking design over here. Now, if you're following along like I am and have the live server extension installed, all we need to do is right click and click open with live server on that HTML. And if I drag that over, you can see that this is what the current version of our HTML looks like. It's pretty ugly and it's just a wall of text. Over here, we want to add this different coloring and different styling to our HTML. So the very first thing that you need to do when you want to apply styles to your HTML is start adding classes to the different elements that you want to select that describes what those elements are. So as you can see, the very first thing that we have here that we can check out is that we have our header section up here, which is going to be this purple background and this white text. And right now it's just this plain black text up here. So we want to be able to select our H1, this section here that says Web Dev Simplified Blog, and we want to be able to apply styles to that. So let's just add a class to this and we'll call it header text. This is going to allow us to give it that nice white color. In order to get started with applying these different styles, we first need to add a CSS style sheet though. So if we come over here, click add new file, we can create a file called styles.css. Now we have a new file and we can import that into our index.html by just going in here and creating a link tag with that rel of style sheet, as you remember from earlier. And we want the href to be pointing to styles.css. Now all of our styles inside of here will be applied to our index.html. And if you remember, the very first thing we want to do is change our header to be purple and then this header text to be white. So we can select our header just by using the HTML element. Generally, I wouldn't recommend using an HTML element like this. I would recommend putting a class on here of, for example, header. But since we want to make sure we understand and learn the different ways to use the selectors, I'm going to be using just the HTML selector. And inside of here, when you want to modify the background color, we're going to use the background color property, and we're just going to set this to purple for now. So now if we save that and go over to our version, you can see we now have a purple background color being applied to this header, which looks great. The next thing we want to do is apply that white colored text to our header text here. So let's just select header text. And if you want to change the font color, what you need to use is the color property, and we're just going to change this to white. And now as you can see, we have white text with our purple background, which looks the same as what we have over here. The only minor difference that you'll notice is this text is actually centered. If I increase my screen size, it becomes a lot easier to see. So what we want to do is make sure that we come in here and text align. This is how we choose if our text is centered, left aligned, right aligned, and so on. And we just want to change that to center. Now over here, you can see that we've center aligned our header. So our header is now exactly the same between these two examples. And you can see all we had to use was these very simple selectors of classes, and in this case, an HTML element. Now the next thing to do is we want to change the font of our header. As you can see, this font in here is slightly different than the font we have over here. So we can again use a class to do this. We can come down, this is our H2 right here, and we can apply a class to this, and we're going to call this article title, just like that. And the nice thing about classes is we can apply this class to both of our H2s. As you can see, we have two header titles, so we can just apply this class to both of them. And now whatever style changes we make inside of our styles.css, you can see it'll change over here. So let's select that article, article title, and we just want to come in here and change the font family. This allows us to change what font we're using. In our case, we're just going to change this to the Arial font because that's downloaded on most people's computers. And if we click save, you can see we now have the Arial font being defined for this header right here and for this header down here because they're sharing the same class name, and the styles that we apply to this one class go to all of the elements that have that class defined on them, which is really powerful and the real reason why using classes is my preferred method of styling CSS. Next up, we have these two sections here where we're going to be styling this date and the author's name. So we can come in here and we just want to put a class on these. We're just going to say article date, and we're going to have another class for the author, which is just going to be called article author. Again, we can copy this down because we want this to be the same class for both of our dates and both of our different authors, as you can see here. And now, if we go into our CSS, you'll see it change over here. We can select our article date to start with, and all we want to do is change the font color. So we can just say color, and we want this to be gray, for example. And now, as you can see, we have that same gray color that we had over here. Another thing you'll notice is that we have this italicized. So the way we can change this to be italicized is by using the font style. This is how we do things like bold or italics. In our case, we can just put italic, and you can see we now have this date being italicized, so it's slightly slanted and looks a little bit different, which is exactly what we wanted. Next, we have the article author, and this article author also is going to have the color of gray. And if we save that, you can now see we have that gray author right here, but you'll notice that this color gray is shared between our date and our author. So we can use that comma trick that we talked about to do or, and we can say we also want to do it when the article date. So we want to do the article date and the article author to be gray. We can remove gray from up here. And now if we save, you'll notice nothing changes. It works exactly the same as before because it's applying this gray color to anything that's an author or anything that's a date, which is exactly what we want. The last thing we have left to do is if we go in here, we want to style this footer. It's going to be very similar to how our header is. So if we come into our index, again, I don't normally use IDs, but in this case, I'm just going to use an ID of footer just so I can show you how all the different selectors work for styling things. So we'll put the ID of footer onto our footer, and now we can select that using that pound symbol. So now we have our footer selected, and all the styles we apply in here are going to go to our footer. So you can already see that we need a background color, which is going to be purple. And if we save that, come over here, we have our purple background. We also want to change our text color to white. And lastly, we want to align that text in the center. And if you save, you can see that this is all showing up exactly like we want it to. But again, you'll notice something else. These are the shared same things between our header text and our header. So what we can do is actually share these two things together. So we can say header text or footer. So now our color white and text center are already taken care of up here. So we can remove them from down here, and you'll notice nothing actually changes. And here with our header, we can also do or our ID of footer, and that's going to apply our background color. And we can actually remove this entire style down here. And as you can see, it didn't change anything about our final product. And now you'll notice that the example we're trying to create here is exactly the same as the example we have over here on the right-hand side. Like I said, it's not beautiful by any means, but hopefully this gives you a better understanding of how to use these basic CSS selectors, and more importantly, how you can combine them together like this to write more concise and cleaner code instead of having a bunch of selectors all over the place. In the next video, we're going to go through another project, but this time I'm going to have you create the project first before I show you how to do it, so you can test your skills that you've learned through these last few videos. So I can't wait to see you in the next video.